In the days leading up to E3, rumours were floating around about a new Spider-Man game in development, as Activision's exclusive contract with the Wallcrawler had come to an end with the last movie tie-in. By then it seemed like the right time to relaunch Spidey's image in the gaming space. Even better, it was suggested Sucker Punch would be the team behind it, which was an excellent pick. With an original trilogy of superhero games under their belt, they were certainly qualified for the task. But when those rumours began to feel ever thin, the Insomniac logo layered itself across the screen. We knew at that point that what we were getting, while not exactly predicted, was still going to be just as exciting. I, as well as many others, have a long history with Insomniac. Some as far back as 1996's Disruptor, but most were likely introduced to them through the Spyro the Dragon and Ratchet & Clank series. Incredible franchises that are still active to this day. These franchises were crucial to Insomniac's development, not just commercially, but during the years of 3D gaming's infancy, they, as many others did, had to create tools to solve problems that didn't exist in years prior. At the same time, games based on superheroes were entering their second era of popularity. Superheroes began their foray into gaming with simple beat-em-ups or platformers. In less than 20 years, however, Spider-Man went from looking like this to this, and by 2009, with the release of Batman Arkham Asylum, some real credibility had been put on the superhero genre. The Arkham trilogy proved to the masses that AAA superhero games could gun for critical acclaim. Story-driven games with just as much to offer as what Rockstar, or at the time, Ubisoft, was delivering. Then came that fateful day in June. E3 2016 will forever go down as my personal favourite E3 presentation, at least when it comes to PlayStation. The first look at God of War, the return of Crash Bandicoot, and of course, the trailer for Marvel's Spider-Man. After the last couple movie tie-in games, it was radical to even see Spider-Man held to the same studio lights as PlayStation's first-party heavy hitters. After that brief yet exhilarating teaser, we'd have to wait a year until E3 2017 for our first gameplay review. And for the most part, what you see here is what we got. Apart from some general tech downgrade, a UI upgrade, a couple story changes that I'll go into later, and puddles. I remember the heavy discourse surrounding Puddlegate. I won't go into it though because it'd be just a waste of time just as much as it was then. After tons of marketing and a maybe too beefy E3 2018 trailer, on September 7th, 2018, Spider-Man released to immediate critical and financial success. I had preemptively taken the day off work and picked up the game as soon as my local game shop opened at 9 AM and played all day, only taking breaks for necessities. I had booked out the time for Spider-Man and you can be damn well sure I used it. I finished the main story in less than a day, playing casually. My investment in the game was unparalleled by anything at the time. Now, before I dig deep with my opinions on every story point, mechanic, or collectible, I should mention that I am playing Spider-Man Remastered that released in 2020. In almost every conceivable way, this version is the best version to play and just runs buttery smooth. There is a bit of an asterisk to that point though. Now that it has been 3 years, I have somewhat softened when it comes to the new face of Peter Parker. I never really hated it to begin with, but it was the inconsistency that really bugged me. The original game was made with the original face model in mind. So in almost every scene, especially emotionally heavy ones, it became distractingly obvious that the new face was a replacement. Insomniac claims the new face would lead to better facial capture, but considering the entire first game's facial capture was already in the can and printed with a completely different face, it was next to impossible to slip that in smoothly. I don't envy the position they were in. While players had grown 2 years accustomed to this Peter Parker face, Insomniac had to come in and flip the script on them. My only takeaway these days is that I'm glad the remaster exists, because if we still had to play the original game and then be confronted by the new face in the sequel, the problem would just forever repeat itself. At least this way it can be retroactively consistent. Another thing that will be missed in the remaster are the loading screens, displaying the suit you're wearing with the most ideal lighting, but losing those cute subway cutscenes does sting a bit. Overall, I do prefer the lightning fast loading of the PS5 to waiting, but some of the character was certainly lost with those. But anyway, that's it. I'm playing the remaster, that's the deal, moving on. Starting the game, we're greeted with Spider, with the man coming one panning shot later. Peter Parker wakes to news of police moving in with a warrant to arrest Wilson Fisk, the kingpin of crime. One of Spider-Man's earliest villains, this particular version has been evading prison for longer than Peter has been Spider-Man, making today a very special day.
You do know I can still see you, right?
8 years of this insolence.
After 8 years with his involvement, Peter was going to see him to the end, behind bars. It's here that we learn that the cops seem to be on neutral grounds with Spider-Man, at least for the time. One captain, Yuri Watanabe, has a two-sided informant relationship with Spider-Man. As she puts it, she tolerates him, but it's clear throughout the game that she values his input. This entire first mission is an absolute perfect tone and scope setter for the entire game. I always love when a game can make such a good impression in just the first mission, while still managing to leave so much game left to discover. It's like a single issue of a comic book, maybe at the end of a long story arc, where Spider-Man has his final confrontation with the Kingpin. Slowly throughout this mission, the basics are drip-fed to you. Web slinging, combat, other means of traversal like vents that make more than a few appearances.
Huh, it's like my own private ventrance.
Finishing off with a simple yet climactic and cinematic brawl with the King of Pins himself. It's here that I have to mention that Yuri Lowenthal is killing it in this role.
Writing your memoirs? Don't forget the hyphen between Spider and Man.
It's not like it's anything new to him either. The years he spent voicing Ben Tennyson definitely would have eased him into this snarky yet optimistic hero type. One webbed up crime boss later, and we're left to heed the warning of Wilson Fisk.
Idiot! I'm the one who kept order in this city! 1 month! In 1 month you'll wish you had me back!
Most of the dialogue you'll hear outside of cutscenes are the massive amounts of phone calls you'll receive throughout the game. Nothing new for this type of game. Allowing the story to continue with words while you continue to traverse the world is a winning formula that I feel will never get old, as long as the way you traverse is fun. In Spider-Man's case, that could not be closer to the truth. Web slinging is fast-paced, easy to pick up, but really fun to practice with. You'll find yourself using every trick you learn throughout the game to speed up your web slinging. Even with the fast travel being the fastest it's ever been in the remaster, I'll still prefer to swing myself over to any given waypoint. It's just satisfying in the best way. The game is gorgeous as well. Even on the PS4 it was, but on the PS5 it really runs and looks as crisp as you can get. You can tell when the developers really got into the lighting of certain areas. As more and more games are reclaiming the ability to run at 60 frames per second, playing anything less is becoming really noticeable to me. Especially Spider-Man's original release. Nothing that truly ruins the experience, but the smoothness has become something I expect in new games, not 30 FPS with gross motion blur. And of course the score complements all of this, raising the orchestral triumphant sounds as you swing faster and faster through the endless sea of skyscrapers. After fleeing the scene of the arrest, Peter hightails it to his real job, where his boss is none other than Dr. Otto Octavius. Insomniac had done such a good job hiding his appearance in the game. If it weren't for the Sinister Six tease towards the end of E3 2018's trailer, I doubt as many people would have even had Doc Ock on their minds. I mean, people hoped and guessed with the clues we had, but nothing official was seen until release, and that was something special. The game was showing so much of Mr. Negative that when we saw Otto, we were in for something a whole lot bigger. The chemistry between these two is amazing, if not also heartbreaking. Peter looks up to Otto in such a way that it blinds him to the red flags that constantly crop up throughout the story. His fraught history with Norman Osborn and degrading mental health, in the pursuit of doing absolute good, Peter accidentally aids in creating absolute evil. When Spider-Man meets back up with the Captain, we get to be put through the paces with the open world activities. First we learn about the Oscorp Towers, the typical open world way to see more of the map. Then we tackle our first couple crimes of the game, randomly occurring events that reward you with tokens. More on that in a bit. As the game continues, the crimes begin to include new factions introduced in the story, such as the Demons, Sable, and Raft prisoners, each with their own set of crimes needed for district completion. The variety of the crimes is perfect for the casual one-time playthrough, but if you're a completionist or can't swing past a crime without feeling just a little bit bad, they will become repetitive quite quickly. Most crimes and challenges do have these sub-goals to keep replays of the same crimes a little interesting, but by and large, you're gonna be seeing some of the same crimes a few times over. Some other collectibles include taking photos of famous landmarks, including some particularly cool Marvel Comics ones, and backpacks that originally belonged to Peter in high school. These come with little trinkets or Easter eggs that Peter offers little audio blurbs to when you open them up in the menu to take a closer look. These are awesome and feel a whole lot better to collect than simply filling up a counter and ticking a box.
Still not sure if opening this would set the Sandman free, but I'm in no hurry to find out.
You might be wondering how Peter was able to go through so many backpacks, but well, seems like they thought of that too.
My Wilson Fisk Science Prize trophy. And check. I couldn't turn it down without arousing suspicion, but no way was I gonna take his money, even though we could have used it. I did accept the lifetime supply of backpacks, though.
After saving Gloria, a homeless lady who snitched on a bunch of thugs, Spider-Man offers some advice: to head to Feast, the homeless shelter that Aunt May and Martin Lee run. As the game goes on, and even in the next game, Gloria reappears again and again. I just love when the New York side characters get the spotlight and put the players on a first name basis with them like Peter would be in real life. When he returns to the lab to repair his suit, Otto walks in and bears witness to the suit laying on the desk. Here, Otto assumes Peter must build Spider-Man's tech. We feel as if this conclusion was made by Otto purposefully, but we are left wondering whether Octavius really does know or not. Whatever the case, he does help with the suit repair, designing the look for what would become the White Spider suit. Let's take a moment to talk about this suit. I remember the discourse surrounding this suit when it was first revealed. It was striking, in a strange way, and definitely made a statement. I remember initially being put off by it, but as time went on, the White Spider has become the identity of this particular franchise. I love it, and it's a welcome addition to the plethora of iconic Spider-Man suits that make their way into this game. Alright, let's get waist deep in the collectibles of this game. As you collect backpacks, take photos, stop crimes, complete bases, challenges, and research, you're rewarded with tokens that fit the task. You spend these tokens on various upgrades and suits throughout the story. Each suit not only serves as a vanity piece, but also comes with its own specific suit power. Your first suit power is simply an automatic focus generator, focus being the stuff that you use for finishes or refilling your health. But the more outlandish suits have you playing guitar, dispersing negative shockwaves, using iron arms in combat, spawning a spider drone to electrocute enemies, and my personal favourite, Web Blossom. I think any avid player of this game knows how broken Web Blossom can be in the right area. Used correctly, Web Blossom can bring a fight down to seconds, webbing and incapacitating anyone in its range. In close quarters, this move is devastating. It was my go-to when I played through the game on New Game Plus Ultimate last year. This time around, I played on Amazing for simplicity's sake, but Ultimate really was a challenge, particularly on the later half of the game, so using everything at my disposal, whether it be the correct suit, power, or gadgets, was a must. The gadgets in this game are tech designed to help with combat. Impact Web shoots a thick webbing that instantly downs enemies. Web bombs will blow up covering close range targets in webs. Tripwires can be attached to objects or enemies to web them up as they pass. Electric webs will electrocute and stun enemies in place. Spider drones will chip away at enemy health. Concussive blast will push enemies away at high speed, and suspension matrix will raise any target in its range to float in the air for a time. Some of these gadgets are by design better than others, with some getting little to no use from me in the first playthrough. However, as I said before, in my Ultimate playthrough, every gadget had its time in the sun. The amount of chaos that can occur if you don't stay on top of the bad guys during a brawl will certainly end in a death, which can happen way quicker than you might expect. I definitely recommend playing on Ultimate on a second playthrough, and it's certainly what I'll be doing with the sequel. The more side quests and collectibles you complete, the more upgrades you can accrue, making your arsenal stronger than ever. What better place to test your strength than the various faction bases across the map? Fisk construction sites, demon warehouses, prisoner camps, and Sable outposts are full of waves of enemies for you to tackle, with extra little sub-challenges if you really want to push yourself. There are also Taskmaster challenges. The skull-faced mercenary leaves boxes that'll begin challenges that include combat, stealth, and traversal. My favourite part of this being that after you've finished a portion of these challenges, you'll be swinging in the open world and suddenly be interrupted by an impromptu boss fight. It's these type of subversions that I appreciate the most as more open world games start to feel the same. It adds that little bit of character and unpredictability when you think you've seen everything a game has to offer. It's all about character and charm, just like the various J. Jonah Jameson podcasts that'll play throughout the game that reference specific story points or side missions you've recently completed.
As if that atrocious white spider wasn't enough, I've had repeated sightings of him in a new outfit. Some sort of punk rock inspired thing that makes sane people want to tear out their eyeballs with a rusty spoon.
Now we get to the heavily divisive human segments of the game. At various points, you'll take control of Mary Jane or Miles Morales to stealth around enemies. These levels are definitely the weakest part of the game for me, and for most people. I will, however, defend the last two missions from these two. The tension from the Rhino stealth mission and the story implications and discovery of the Osborn Mansion mission help to keep me entertained through an otherwise dull experience. When the new enemy faction, Inner Demons, come to town, Peter quickly discovers the leader to be Martin Lee, the owner of the Feast Shelter, dubbed Mr. Negative by Jameson. You spend a large portion of the game trying to bring him and his gang down as they try to go after Norman Osborn. In the crossfire, Miles Morales sadly loses his father, and Peter steps in to try and mentor him at Feast. Interestingly enough, the E3 2017 showcase had Peter discovering Martin Lee's connection to the demons here, instead of here. A change that makes the revelation feel like an off-screen moment to us. I mean, we know, but for Peter it feels like he didn't get the Martin Lee moment in the actual game, and he just knows in the next scene.
I'm busy. What's up?
Have you started looking for Martin Lee yet?
No, I told you I can't start a manhunt based on a hunch from Spider-Man.
But I'm telling you, he's the guy!
Norman Osborn, meanwhile, enlists the help of Sable International, a private military group that doesn't see the difference between taking down a demon or you. As Martin Lee uses the demons to gain more control, he then begins to hunt down the whereabouts of a bioweapon called Devil's Breath, something created by Norman Osborn. The status quo of the game shifts as more elements are introduced, but nothing shifts as much as when you finally get to take down Mr. Negative in Grand Central Station. After an admittedly fun Mary Jane mission that has you directing Spider-Man to stealth take down enemies, a boss fight between you and Mr. Lee transpires. The boss fights in the game are nothing crazy, usually pushing you to dodge waves of attacks before using the downtime to beat them up. We see that earlier with Shocker, and it's no different here, except maybe slightly more cramped. After what would normally be the end of a story, with Martin Lee taken to prison, the whole Raft and Rikers Island prisons experience a massive breakout. It's here when the game's story really takes a turn for the chaotic. 5 of Peter's most colourful and dangerous enemies escape, including Mr. Negative, and gang up on him on top of the prison. It was unclear who broke them out until Otto Octavius, with his massive metal tentacles, comes bounding over you. He gives you a final warning and leaves you wounded.
Stay out of our way.
As even the most novice Spider-Man fan would have seen this coming, it's still massively heartbreaking to see Peter's friend and mentor fall so far out of favour. Doc Ock cracks open the Devil's Breath virus above Times Square, leading to an almost immediate outbreak across the city. The open world past this point of the game is a dusty, fiery mess, with prisoners and Sable agents occasionally sniping you from building tops, casually taking half your health. In ultimate difficulty, these rooftop shooters actually posed a threat. If you weren't careful and looked away from the screen for even a couple seconds, one of these guys could kill you in one shot. The last few missions in the endgame are by far the most colourful and cinematic, hunting down the members of the Sinister Six, with 2 very enjoyable boss fights, Electro with Vulture and Rhino with Scorpion. These duo boss fights not only test your focus and balance when it comes to choosing which member to fight and which to leave alone, as the one left alone will still attack you, but the dialogue between Spider-Man and the villains is unsurprisingly hilarious.
Together time might help you boys learn to play nice.
After taking down the first 4 members, Mary Jane attempts to sneak into Norman Osborn's penthouse to hunt down the location of where the cure for Devil's Breath is being created. She gets more than she bargains for, however, as she discovers the true reason for Harry Osborn's absence from the game. A staple character of the Spider-Man mythos, Harry was cited as simply being in Europe for most of the game, but it's here we discover that he was instead sick.
This can't be for Harry, can it?
Devil's Breath was an attempt to cure Harry of the disease that took the life of his mum years prior. And not only that, one early rendition of this attempted cure unintentionally created Mr. Negative in a lab accident that had him killing his parents with his newfound negative powers. We also find out that Norman Osborn seems to be testing on spiders, and takes particular interest in Spider-Man's powers. On follow-up playthroughs of this particular mission, I find it fascinating and incredibly eerie that as the characters believe Harry to be halfway across the Earth, he instead floats unconsciously only centimeters away in this massive container. As Mary Jane escapes, she unknowingly takes a spider with her, that of course ends up biting Miles, so we have that little chestnut to come back to.
No.
Peter rushes to the lab where the cure resides, only to be met with a rematch with Martin Lee. After beating him, he's left a broken man. With the newfound knowledge of his origin regarding Norman Osborn, it becomes clear why Lee has done this.
Osborn needs to pay.
I know.
But revenge, especially by someone with his type of power, is nothing more than irresponsible. As he gets through to Martin and receives the cure, a far more stronger revenge-driven character arrives to steal it, and Norman Osborn himself.
Ready for your final act?
As we approach the climax of the game, Aunt May is deathly sick with the virus, as well as half of New York, and the only way any of these people are going to receive the cure in meaningful time is if Peter defeats Dr. Octopus. You get a new suit for your troubles that refills your gadgets, and you make your way to the final boss. This boss is a tad bit harder than the others, but not so hard as to detract from the experience you get between the dialogue of these two emotionally fraught individuals. It's always a tough balance with these type of sequences. The final boss of the game needs to pose a challenge, but not so much that the player keeps having the story interrupted by dying. But as it stands, I think this game gets it just right. As the fight moves to the side of the building, the chance of death is virtually zero. The game just simply waits for you to pound enough hits into DaAcorn to finish the fight, end the game. Peter rushes back to the feast shelter with the cure, but is told that he can either cure Aunt May now, or cure the rest of New York. Though the answer is obvious to Peter, it's no less upsetting to see him deal with such an ultimatum. As Aunt May slowly reaches her end, she asks Spider-Man to take off his mask.
Take off your mask. I want to see my nephew.
This scene had me crying like a baby the first time I saw it, and I still get choked up every time.
You knew?
I've known for a while.
But I think the best part of this scene is the way it's able to recontextualize Aunt May's scenes on a second playthrough. Knowing that she knows just adds another layer to the things she says or asks of Peter, and makes you really appreciate the detail they took with not only her, but all the characters.
Parker. You knew? You knew?
You knew?
As the game comes to a close, and as Peter and Miles seemingly both pretend that this table is heavy, Miles confides in Peter, showing him his newfound powers,
It's pretty weird, right?
as Peter does the same.
Not that weird.
Then, halfway across the city, in Norman Osborn's secret lab, we finally see Harry in the flesh, in stasis in what seems to be a black, gooey, sentient substance. A tease for a story coming very soon. Overall, I don't think I could possibly ask for anything else when it comes to a Spider-Man game. The looks, the gameplay, the story, everything really hits its hardest for me, and is certainly one of my favourite games of all time. In the post-game, you can choose to scoop up any remaining collectibles you may have missed, including a 3-part side mission that ends with a boss fight with Tombstone. If there's anything I can ask when it comes to a direct sequel, it would be more of these type of side missions. The more of Spidey's colourful and creative rogues gallery that appear, the better. Once you collect everything in the game, you get the best suit of them all, with the ever-powerful suit power, Equalizer. Everyone dies in one hit, including you. I do wish this suit power was always passively active so I could do a whole playthrough with this, but hey, maybe next time. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning when I first finished Spider-Man's story. Even while savouring the experience, spending the entire day playing, it was bound to come to an end. But as I complete my 5th playthrough for this video, I guess you can argue that it never really did end, did it? And even then, I'm bound to play it again in the coming years. But that's not quite the end of this particular game, is it? Please join me next week as I add a little compendium piece to this video in the form of a The City Never Sleeps DLC review. Please subscribe if you don't want to miss that or any of my other future uploads, and I'd like to thank you for watching DaAcorn.